The Serpent Queen Olympias, mother of Alexander the Great. Did you know that behind the world's greatest conqueror stood a woman so mysterious that even her enemies whispered she might be part goddess? Her name was Olympias. She was the mother of Alexander the Great, and her story begins not on the battlefield, but in the shadows of the royal court of ancient Epirus. Born around 375 BC, Olympias was a princess of the Molossian tribe, a mountain people who believed their kings descended from Achilles himself. She grew up in a world of rituals, sacred fires, and serpents that slithered through temples dedicated to Zeus. From a young age, she was drawn to religion and prophecy. The stories say she danced in the moonlight among the priestesses of Dionysus, wrapped in sacred snakes that symbolized the god spirit. Whether that was true or not, one thing is certain: Olympias understood the power of mystery. Let's float over to the royal palace of Macedon, where the ambitious King Philip II ruled. Philip was a warrior with a dream to unite Greece under his command. During a visit to Epirus, he met the young Olympias. She was unlike any woman he had seen. Fierce eyes, quiet confidence, and a sense of destiny that seemed to surround her like a veil. They married soon after, and the union linked two powerful dynasties. But their marriage was not a tale of peace. The Macedonian court was a place of ambition and suspicion, filled with nobles whispering in corners and generals plotting their rise. Olympias found herself an outsider. She came from a foreign land with strange customs, and her devotion to the gods of mystery made her both fascinating and feared. When her son Alexander was born, the omens spoke loudly. It was said that on the night of his birth, the temple of Artemis in Ephesus caught fire. Some believed it was a sign that a force so great had entered the world that the goddess herself could no longer bear the strain. Olympias told people that Zeus had come to her in the form of a serpent before Alexander's conception. She said her son was not born of man but of the god himself. Philip laughed, but the story spread across Macedon, and Olympias never denied it. In those early years, mother and son grew inseparable. Olympias saw in Alexander the promise of greatness. She filled his mind with tales of divine heroes and immortal kings. Achilles, Hercules, and Perseus, all were his ancestors, she claimed. She wanted him to believe he was destined for glory, and he did. Her influence became the foundation of his unshakable belief in his own destiny. Let's move through time to the court of Philip once more. As the king's power grew, so did his enemies, both outside and inside his palace. He took new wives, made new alliances, and Olympias watched her position weaken. One of his new brides was a young Macedonian noblewoman named Cleopatra, not the Egyptian queen we know, but a rival just as dangerous. When Cleopatra bore Philip a child, the court began to whisper that this new heir was the true Macedonian prince. She had given Philip his firstborn son, the brilliant Alexander, yet now she and her child were being pushed aside. The tension between them reached its breaking point at a royal feast. One of Philip's generals toasted to the hope of a legitimate Macedonian heir. Alexander rose, furious, and threw his cup. Words turned to threats, and Philip, drunk and enraged, tried to attack his own son but stumbled and fell. Olympias saw it as an omen. The gods were no longer with him. Soon after, she left Macedon with Alexander and returned to her homeland in Epirus. But she was not done. Her influence from afar continued to shape Alexander's heart. She sent him letters filled with advice, warnings, and encouragement. When Philip began preparing for a grand campaign against Persia, rumors once again filled the court. Some said Olympias feared that Philip's success would overshadow Alexander's destiny. Others whispered she had a darker plan. Let's glide to that fateful day in 336 BC. The palace in Egypt buzzed with celebration. Philip had just married off his daughter, and all of Macedon had gathered to honor him. As he walked proudly through the crowd, unguarded and smiling, a man stepped forward and drove a dagger into his chest. The king fell dead before the eyes of his people. The assassin was killed immediately, but the question of who truly planned the murder would echo through history. Many believed Olympias was behind it. Her rival Cleopatra was soon found dead, her child murdered. Some said Olympias herself ordered it. Whether truth or rumor, the result was clear. Her son Alexander was now king, and at just 20 years old he would soon conquer the known world. But Olympias was not content to fade into the background. As Alexander's armies marched east, she ruled Macedon in his absence. She acted as his guardian in the west, ensuring that no rival could challenge his throne. Yet power came with enemies. The nobles still whispered about her strange rituals and her pride. They said she slept beside snakes, that she spoke to spirits, that she considered herself divine. Still, Olympias did not waver. She believed her son was chosen by the gods, and she would protect that destiny at any cost. Every letter she sent to him carried both love and command. She urged him to be bold, to remember his divine blood, to never let mortal fear hold him back. And Alexander listened. Even from thousands of miles away, her voice guided him like a shadow across the deserts and mountains he conquered. Let's float forward to the moment when Alexander stood as ruler of Asia. The son of Olympias had achieved what no man before him could, the conquest of Persia. Yet even at the height of his glory, he never forgot his mother's lessons. He called himself the son of Zeus. He demanded his men bow before him as a god. Many historians trace that divine claim not to his ambition alone, but to Olympias, the woman who once whispered that very idea into his young ears. As Alexander reached the peak of his empire, Olympias' power back home began to stir again. She saw her chance to secure her family's future forever. But destiny is never kind to those who challenge the order of kings. The Queen of Shadows, Olympias, and the aftermath of Alexander's empire, let's drift back to Macedon. The year is 323 BC, the world stands in silence. Alexander the Great is dead. The conqueror who had stretched his empire from Greece to India now lies cold in Babylon. His soldiers weep. His generals gather in disbelief. And far away in Epirus, Olympias feels the chill of fate moving through her bones. Her son, whom she had raised to believe he was divine, was gone. Yet she refused to accept it as the end. To her, death was only another test of the god's will. Olympias declared that Alexander had not truly died. His spirit, she said, had returned to Olympus. She ordered rituals across her homeland, calling on the spirits to protect his name. To the Macedonians, her words were both sacred and unsettling. Let's float over to the royal palace in Macedon, where power has now turned into chaos. Alexander left behind no clear heir. His wife, Roxana, was pregnant. His half-brother, Aridaeus, was alive but mentally unfit to rule. The empire he built now hung like a sword between ambitious generals, each ready to claim a piece for himself. Olympias saw danger rising on every side. She knew that without her guidance, her grandson's life would be in peril. So she took a bold step. Leaving her homeland, she returned to Macedon once more. This time not as a wife or queen, but as the mother of a god and the guardian of his bloodline. At first, she stayed in the shadows. She watched the struggle between the generals unfold. Antipater, Perdiccas, Ptolemy, and others. Each man sought power in Alexander's absence. Letters traveled back and forth across the empire, alliances forming and shattering like glass. Olympias read every rumor. She understood every game. She was patient. Let's move to the moment when Antipater, the old regent of Macedon, died. His son Cassander took his place, a sharp, cunning man with little love for Olympias. He saw her influence as poison and feared her return. Cassander wanted control of Macedon for himself. Olympias wanted the throne secured for her grandson, Alexander IV, the son of Roxana. Their conflict was inevitable. Olympias began to gather support. Many soldiers and nobles still held deep loyalty to Alexander's memory. To them, she was not just a queen, she was a living link to their godlike king. Her letters carried power. Her words were filled with the same fire that had once driven her son to conquer nations. She called upon the memory of Alexander and promised that his legacy would not be stolen. Let's glide to Epirus once again, where Olympias forged her alliance with Polyperchon, one of Alexander's loyal generals. Together, they planned to restore the true royal line. She would return to Macedon with Alexander's widow, Roxana, and the young prince. The people would rise, she believed, and the divine blood of her son would rule again. In 317 BC, Olympias made her move. Her army marched into Macedon, banners flying with symbols of the Argead dynasty. The people welcomed her with reverence. To many, it felt as if Alexander's spirit had returned. Cassander's forces retreated, and Olympias once again held power in the land she had once fled. But power is a fragile crown. Once inside the palace, Olympias turned her fury toward those who had wronged her family. She ordered the execution of Philip Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, and his wife Eurydice. The young queen Eurydice, proud and defiant, begged for her life, but Olympias refused. Some say she sent serpents into Eurydice's cell, echoing her old sacred rituals. Others say she simply watched in silence as her rivals met their end. Whatever the truth, her actions sent a message across the empire. Olympias had returned, and her vengeance was complete. But with that vengeance came isolation. Many of her former allies began to withdraw. The soldiers who once cheered her name now whispered behind her back. Cassander regrouped, gathering forces in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Let's move forward to the siege of Pydna. Cassander's army surrounded Olympias' stronghold. Supplies dwindled. Her allies deserted one by one. Yet she remained calm. Those inside the walls said she walked among her soldiers at night, speaking softly of destiny, reminding them that they served not a mortal cause but a divine one. As the months dragged on, hunger began to break their spirit. Cassander offered terms, surrender and mercy. Olympias refused. She had faced kings, gods, and betrayals before. To her, death was nothing compared to dishonor. But the siege tightened, and finally, the gates fell. Cassander entered the city, his victory complete. Olympias was captured. She was no longer the Serpent Queen of Macedon, but a prisoner in her own kingdom. Yet even then, she carried herself with regal pride. Cassander feared her presence, for he knew the people still revered her name. Executing her himself would make her a martyr. So he gave her to her enemies, the families of those she had condemned. Let's stand in the cold courtyard where her fate was sealed. The crowd gathered, silent and unsure. Before them stood the mother of Alexander, the woman who had once ruled their world. Cassander's order was simple. She was to die. The people hesitated. None dared lift a hand. They saw in her face the echo of her son's power, the same fire that had conquered nations. But in the end, vengeance overcame reverence. The mob moved forward. The queen fell. And with her death, the last link to Alexander's divine bloodline began to fade. Cassander buried her without honors, trying to erase her name from memory. But memory does not fade so easily. Let's float one last time through the halls of her past. The temple fires, the whispered prophecies, the proud mother who believed her son was born of gods. History has called her many things, cruel, ambitious, even mad. Yet she was also a woman who refused to bow before the men who sought to control her. In her eyes, she was never mortal. She was part of something eternal. Olympias lived and died for a single belief, that greatness was not given, but inherited by the will of the divine. Her story did not end in triumph, but it shaped the legend of the man who changed the ancient world forever. And though her name has been wrapped in shadow for centuries, the spirit of Olympias remains, whispering from the edges of history. The legacy of a goddess, Olympias, mother of immortality. Let's drift now through the quiet aftermath of an empire that no longer knows its master. The banners of Alexander have fallen. The marble halls that once echoed with victory songs now stand cold. His generals have carved the world into fragments, each ruling in his name but fighting for his glory. Yet among all those who claimed to understand him, only one ever truly did, his mother Olympias. Years after her death, her story still haunted the courts of Macedon. Whispers of her power moved through every corner of the fractured empire. Some called her a witch who had bewitched kings. Others, a priestess who had touched the gods themselves. But those who remembered her closely, the soldiers who once served under Alexander, the courtiers who had seen her eyes, spoke of her as something else entirely. A woman who lived not for her own crown, but for the dream of her son. Let's float back to her youth for a moment. In Epirus, among the sacred groves and mountain temples, young Olympias once stood before the fire of Zeus and swore an oath. She vowed that her bloodline would never bow to another. Perhaps it was only legend. Perhaps the vow was real. But from that moment, her life became a single path of devotion to destiny. Even in death, her influence did not fade. After Cassander had her killed, he expected silence. Instead, he faced unrest. Across Greece, poets began to speak her name again. In the shrines of Dionysus, priestesses whispered of the Serpent Queen who had walked among mortals. They said her soul had ascended to join her son in Olympus. Let's glide to Babylon, where Alexander's body lay in its golden coffin. His generals fought over who should guard it. Some wanted it buried beside his father in Macedon. Others claimed it belonged in Egypt. None mentioned Olympias, Yet she had been the one who once said that Alexander's body must never rest in soil that was unworthy of him. Years later, when his tomb was placed in Alexandria, many believed it was her unseen will that guided it there. The stories of Olympias and Alexander began to blend into one. Artists carved her image beside his. Historians described her eyes as bright as fire, her expression calm, her spirit untamed. Some accounts said that she appeared in dreams to soldiers far from home, urging them to remember the empire her son had built. To the people who believed in divine blood, she had become more than a queen. She was a bridge between mortals and gods. Let's move to the scholars of later centuries. They debated her legacy endlessly. Was she the protector of a divine destiny or the architect of her own ruin? Ancient writers, most of them men, painted her as dangerous and proud. They called her ruthless because she refused to obey. They called her unnatural because she ruled without a king. But others saw something different. They saw a woman who understood the fragile line between faith and power. A woman who had lived in a world built by men and dared to shape it with her own hands. Her name survived through the Roman era, whispered by philosophers who studied Alexander's life. Plutarch wrote that her influence over her son was profound and unmatched. He said she gave him a sense of greatness that no tutor could ever teach. She was his flame, his conscience, his divine mirror. Even in moments of conquest, when Alexander stood above the cities he had destroyed, part of him still carried her words, that he was born not merely to rule men but to stand among gods. Let's float over to Egypt again, centuries later. The city of Alexandria had grown vast and filled with marble temples and libraries. Pilgrims came to see the tomb of Alexander, but among them were those who also prayed to his mother's spirit. They left offerings of olive branches and serpent carvings. To them, Olympias had become a symbol of divine motherhood, the mortal who gave birth to immortality. Her legend took new forms. In some traditions, she became a figure of prophecy. In others, she was remembered as the first queen of sacred wisdom. Artists in later ages painted her surrounded by golden light, holding a serpent in one hand and a crown in the other. They said the serpent was Zeus, and the crown was her son's destiny. Together, they represented the eternal cycle of creation and power. Let's pause and see her through a different lens. Not as a figure of myth, but as a mother. Olympias lived in a world where women were silenced, where queens were expected to stand behind their kings. Yet she never stood behind anyone. She fought for her child, protected his legacy, and defied every ruler who tried to erase him. Her love was fierce, her methods relentless, but her purpose was pure. To make sure the name of Alexander the Great would never die, and she succeeded. 2,000 years later, her son's name still stands among the greatest in history. His conquests are studied, his city still bears his name. But behind that immortal figure is the shadow of the woman who made him believe he could conquer the world. Without Olympias, there might have been no Alexander. Without her belief in divine destiny, his dream might never have taken flight. Let's drift toward the end now, through the mists of time. The ruins of Macedon have long since turned to dust. The palaces where she once walked are gone. Yet her story endures in whispers, in history's soft corners, where power and faith meet. The snake, the queen, the mother, the legend, all parts of a single soul that refused to be ordinary. Her final legacy is not written in stone or empire. It lives in the idea that belief itself can shape destiny. Olympias believed so completely in her son as greatness that the world was forced to believe it too. She turned myth into history, and history, in turn, made her immortal. So when you hear the name Alexander the Great, remember the woman who gave him to the world. Remember the queen of shadows, the serpent of Epirus, the mother of immortality. Remember Olympias, the woman who dared to believe her child was a god, and made the world believe it too.